Hi guys, in politics it may look like a leader has a choice, but in reality they don't. Keir Starmer didn't really have a decision to make when it became blatantly obvious that the US was walking away from Ukraine. He knew that he would have to throw his lot in with other European countries. Now the UK has been saying for some time that it's one of, if not the strongest ally Ukraine has on the continent. So when it came to committing UK troops to a possible peacekeeping force, Starmer could only say yes. Here the Prime Minister delivered a speech on what he's willing to commit to. Have a listen.
Good evening. I want to thank President Macron for convening us this evening. At stake is not just the future of Ukraine, it is an existential question for Europe as a whole, and therefore vital for Britain's national interest. This is a once-in-a-generation moment for the collective security of our continent. Only a lasting peace in Ukraine that safeguards its sovereignty will deter Putin from further aggression in the future. Now, recent statements by the US administration should not come as a surprise. President Trump has long expressed the wish for Europe to step up and meet the demands of its own security, that he wants to get a lasting peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine. So today's informal meeting of European leaders was a vital first step in responding to that challenge. On defence, it's clear the US is not going to leave NATO. But we Europeans will have to do more. The issue of burden sharing is not new, but it is now pressing. And Europeans will have to step up, both in terms of spending and the capabilities that we provide. On Ukraine, we're at the very early stage of the process. Europe must play its role. And I'm prepared to consider committing British forces on the ground, alongside others, if there is a lasting peace agreement. But there must be a US backstop, because a US security guarantee is the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again. So I will go to Washington next week to meet President Trump and to discuss what we see as the key elements of a lasting peace. I spoke to President Zelensky on Friday and will do so again in coming days. And we envisage a further meeting with European colleagues when I return from the US. In this moment, we have to recognise the new era that we are in, not cling hopelessly to the comforts of the past. It's time for us to take responsibility for our security, for our continent. And I've been clear today, Britain will take a leading responsibility, as we always have. Because Ukraine must have a secure future, Europe must have a secure future, Britain must have a secure future, and democratic values must prevail. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. Now, first of all, I want to start off by saying, and I hope I'm wrong when I say this, but I do not believe that Donald Trump cares about Ukraine. He actually sees Putin as a tool he can use to weaken Europe. We saw with the discussion with J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice president, where he was attacking Europe. He was criticizing it, trying to embarrass it. So these are not the words of an ally. These are not the words of a friend. So once again, I keep saying this. I believe that Donald Trump wants a weakened Europe, and he sees Putin as a tool in that arsenal. Now, when Starmer talks about the US backstop, I think he's being extremely hopeful here. Now, hopefully, he can, when he goes to meet with Donald Trump next week, he can get some sort of concession out of him, get some sort of support. But I don't think it's going to happen. And I hope I'm wrong on that regard. Now, Starmer had to respond in this way. There has been a lot of criticism of him committing or promising to commit or open to the idea of committing UK troops to a possible peacekeeping force. But the UK already has peacekeepers around the world. There are about 600 troops in Africa at the moment, in South Sudan and Mali. So this is nothing new. So anyone who's saying, how dare you send troops into harm's way? Look, troops have been sent into harm's way over the last number of decades. So this is nothing new. I understand why people are angry. I understand why people are concerned. But this is nothing new. The location is new, but the situation is not. And Starmer has to commit this. What's the alternative? To say, we're not going to get involved, we just want to let the European nations get involved. This would not be leadership, and this would be abandoning Ukraine in this. And of course, Starmer and his administration will be deeply criticised over this by the Conservatives and by parties in the UK and European allies, because they'd be saying, well, you're acting just like Donald Trump, walking away. So there was no real decision to be made here. Starmer had to go along with this. Now, what he mentioned here as well is more investment. But there's a massive problem here. It's not just about money. You have to have the manpower. So he's talking about rebuilding the armed forces. The Tories ran them into the ground over the last number of years. But rebuilding the armed forces is an unbelievable task to take on, because it's not just money. You need manpower. You need soldiers. How do you train up all the soldiers you need? It'll take tens of thousands of soldiers to get up to the levels that Keir Starmer would hope to be at. That's going to take years. You can try and train people from other parts of the economy, but then that will damage the economy, because there's a shortage of workers at the moment. We've already heard about how the NHS and social care are struggling to get access to the staff they need. So imagine a situation where you're taking people out of the private sector, putting them into the armed forces, training them up. This is going to damage the economy at a time when the economy is not doing so well. So it's not just a case of printing money or borrowing money and dumping it into defense. You need the staff. You need workers to work in the industries to produce armaments. You need people working in technology. And the UK can't rely on the US when it comes to technology, or the US in general. So you'd have to start building up internal industries. And that's going to take time. It's going to require a massive amount of investment. And of course, staff, which is, of course, once again, in short supply. So there are some massive tasks here that need to be dealt with. Like, the alternative to all of this is just to run away, to abandon Ukraine. And then what would happen? Putin would obviously move on to other countries in Eastern Europe, and then the UK would have to get involved. It would be much more expensive at that stage. Or you could make the argument, don't get involved. Allow a resurgent Russia to cross into other parts of Eastern Europe. Then what would happen to the UK's guarantees under Article 5 of NATO's agreements? So it would open a lot of cans of worms, not just one. So this would be something that the UK government would have to eventually respond to. So there is no real option here for Keir Starmer. He has to go along with this. It's going to require a significant amount of effort, and it could require a significant amount of pain within the economy. And that's not going to be good news for voters, and it's certainly not going to be good news for ordinary people who are struggling at the moment to get by, who are relying on the NHS to provide them with the care that they need, and relying on social care towards the end of their lives. Some real challenges coming down the road for Keir Starmer. If he thought it was going to be easy at the beginning, it's going to get much more difficult later on. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.